Hi! In this video I'm going to show you how to make the 3-ribbed Grantham button. So let's get started. In order to work the 3-ribbed Grantham button design, you're going to need one of the Gina's Grantham Button looms. And these, of course, are available on our website. So this design, I've had some people say that they've had some difficulty with, but it's a lovely design, so I thought a visual would be really helpful. I'm using a DK cotton, primarily because I think this will show up nicely. I've got a little bit of tape on the end, and I'm just going to tape this to the back of the loom so that the thread is at the side of one of the tabs and the other end is threaded onto a needle. I'm going to come up to the right, over to the left, and then underneath the top thread on the right tab and over the bottom thread on the right tab. Center that up and come around the tab again, and that's one round. I'm going to do a second round for the 3-rib designs in the same way, except that we're going to weave in opposition. So this one will go over this and then under, around the tab, then over, under, over and around the tab, and then under, over, over, and around the tab. Now remember, your initial loops around the tab shouldn't be too tight, or you may end up having to cut some of your loops to remove your button covering from the loom. So now we need to start on the ribs. Now, the principle of the ribs is that the center two, so the threads that are right on the first threads on the tab, they're going to form the rib. So we're going to treat those differently than the other threads that build up. Those threads that build up will be woven in the same way as an ordinary Grantham button. So, over, and then I'm going to go under those two, and come back around it. So that is forming the back stitch, the rounding back stitch. So back around and up. And then we can see that this one, because that's over, this one has to go under, and then you need to go around the tab to come to the next part. Now it is helpful if you rotate. It's always more helpful if you're working with your the bit that you're working on here in front of you, but for the first few rounds I won't rotate it so that you can sort of see what's happening and where we're going with it. So I'm going to go over this thread, and then I'm going to go under the two central ones. And then the rounding back stitch, so I come back around, and then that's another rib done. Now that means that this one I need to go under, and then I need to go over, and then around the tab again. So you can see we've got 2 ribs starting to form. So now I have to go under, then over, and then there I am at the 2 central pairs, so I will go under both of those, the 2 central threads, the pair at the thread, and then back around. It is easier if you just work that one without trying to figure out what the next loop is. And then I need to take my kink out. There we go. So that one's gone over, So it means I need to go under, then over, and then back to the tab. So now I'll start rotating so that it's a little easier to work. So around the tab, over, under, then under those two. My needle's just come unthreaded. Work a back stitch over that pair, and then over, under, and around the tab to get me to this end. So over, under two, over, a back stitch, so we're going over those and back around, and then the next one is over, under, over, and around the tab. And the hardest thing probably to remember is to go around the tab each time. I always forget when I'm working the rib design for some reason. It's easy to lose track of where you are. So under, over, under, and then under those central two. Then over, under, and over again. And back around the tab. So I will carry on in this way to get this all made up. A little extra note if you're running out of thread. End your thread at a tab. You can then just tuck it under the loop that you've already created, and then you can add a new length. Again, just tucked under some of those threads. And you can just knot this at this point, and then it won't be so obvious, and it's a great way. You can also add colors by doing it that way as well. If you're changing your colors, you probably want to make sure that you do this in a consistent method for the rows, but then you can just carry on with what you were doing in the same order in which you were doing it. When you've worked as far as you wish to work, it's a good idea to now work some plain weaving, which won't quite be right at the central pieces, so I will show you, but just to lock everything into place. So you'll work your weaving as you do need to. So your overs and unders as they need to be. And then when you get to that central two, you need to sort of, it's up to you how you do this. I tend to just work it in opposition to what it would be here, and it tends to work out. So straight in, and that has worked the correct overs and unders to keep everything in line, and it should more or less work out that way because you started out with your extra. But if you want to just go over the two, that is also entirely up to you. Now what you need to do is, for this last 1 or 2 rounds, even more if you prefer, you don't go around the tab this time. You work in a complete circle all of the way round to help lock in that weaving. And it'll help keep those ribs in line as well. and that's brought me back around to where we started. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to work a little knot, just so that when we work the next part, we can still use the same thread without dislodging any of that. And so you'll see that what you've got is your 3 ribs, and you've got a nice basket weave in between the ribs. So now it's just a matter of flip those loops off, and you can now decide how you wish to have this button. Now I quite like this particular one as a ball button, because I think that really emphasizes the ribs nicely, so that's what I'm going to make. But you can of course go ahead and make a button cover for a flat button. You can of course make a ball button or use a dome, make a little ball of fabric. I'm just going to stuff this with some more of the actual thread. This is a good method if you're working, for instance, a jumper or a cardigan, because that way you know that everything is going to sort of shrink at the same way. And then we're just going to work these so that these loops come towards the center. And then all you need to do is a little bit of gathering. To bring this up and around and into the ball shape that you want. And those loops help to add extra stuffing when you're working a soft button. And all of the Grantham buttons, when you're making them into balls, will want to sort of naturally form into more triangular shape. So you do have to be aware of that, but that obviously is because of the tabs that you're working with. But you can soon round it off very nicely. And then what I like to do I'm rolling it around helps you to see where those points are from the triangle and what needs tightening in to make it more round. Little knot. One 3-ribbed Grantham button. As a little extra, I'm going to show you how to work a zigzag pattern over the pattern that you're working here. So what you need to do is take a contrasting thread, and then you need to decide. I tend to like to work above the weave going to the left, and then it sort of works itself out as you go. So basically what you do is you weave and you follow through so that every single one of your over weaves has a second thread of a contrasting color. I'm just going to leave a length there, running alongside it. So follow the pattern. I like to do each section separately so that I can get my zigzags right. So again, I'll drop down to the next one. So can you just see there's a stripe running along on each of the rows. And so I'll just connect it at the bottom and come up on the next row. And I'm always working in this direction so that my colored thread is lying above the stripe. So now we need to make it so that it's a zigzag. So in order to do that, we need to go along on the opposite. So working in that direction, we'll go on the underneath or the bottom line of the thread, not the top. And again, always working it so that your thread is above, it is working on the over stitch. So it's running alongside underneath or at the bottom of the thread, however is easiest for you to remember it. You now have a zigzag design running through, and obviously this can be as contrasted as you like. If you see that you've missed any as you've done any of your weaving, you can always go in and put an extra stitch in and then carry on and start with the next section, and so you can get something quite pronounced like this, and that's worked in that way. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that made sense. You can get the Gina's Grantham Button Kit over on our website, and there's also a booklet that you can get that has additional designs and all sorts of different things so that you can do different designs for the Grantham Button Kit. Do please subscribe to the channel if you like this sort of thing. Leave me a comment, click like, all that usual stuff. And thank you for watching. Take care of yourselves. Bye bye now.